So we were going to add a small joke there without further ado, because it's a sewer scope.
Without further ado, poop emoji.
There we go.
Insert poop emoji here.
Now, thank you for coming, everybody. We'll be recording this just to review it later, and if it's any good, we'll post it on social media. But I'm happy to say that the very first thing that shows up on the recording is Steven saying doo-doo. So we have that going for us. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to get right into YouTube video. No, sorry. Freudian slip. We're going to get right into the sewer scope. So what is a sewer scope? A sewer scope is basically just a visual camera recording of the building sewer line from the house to the city tap or the HOA tap. We like to go in from a clean out, which is an access point at or near the building foundation, and we are looking for just the condition of the building sewer at the time of the inspection. You would be surprised but not shocked to see all the different problems that we have saved clients in just a year of doing this inspection. And it starts with the pre-inspection agreement. And all it really says is a visual inspection only. It's not a warranty or guarantee of any kind. It's not a X-ray vision or a crystal ball, but it will let them know right away if work's going to be needed. And this goes out to anybody that has contracted us to do a sewer scope video for them. I've taken the liberty of pulling up a couple of reports so you can get a look at them, and you'll notice right away that it follows the same format as our standard home inspection, those of you who've done them with us. And you know, we take pictures of the clean out area before and after so they can see that, you know, we didn't do any damage to their yard, and we take screenshots of the videos so we can add you know, just pictures, and at the end there's a link to the video itself. Here we go. Third time's the charm. And by all means, guys, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat and we'll get to them. Deanne will interrupt, or you can too. It's all good. This is kind of informal today, and I'm really glad everybody's here. And hopefully by the time we're done, we'll see what kind of value, you know, we're giving our clients. Hello, this is Vito with Oxide Home Inspections, and welcome to another exciting edition of Sewer Scope. That's right. I'm gonna mute it. There's no point in hearing me narrate a video I took a long time ago. But really, you know, it's just running the camera down the sewer line, and you can see here that this is PVC. It's Schedule 40. A clear giveaway is the white plastic and the purple primer on the joints. PVC typically has a lifespan of 50 to 200 years, and some of the common problems associated with it are going to be, excuse me, compressions, low spots, bellies, debris in the line. We see a lot of debris in the line, and you can see right here, just that staining. Now, the camera's inverted, so that dark spot on the top, that's actually the bottom of the pipe, just for orientation. But you can see how far up that stain goes, almost to 3 and 9 o'clock. And that tells me this line's backed up. I've already seen it. And as we get down further in the line, we're going to see some other problems too. And I've pulled up a few. I don't know if it's this one or the other ones, but roots grow in. Sometimes that they only repair a certain section of the line, and you'll see cast iron that's all rusted and scaled and starting to delaminate. You'll see cracked clay and concrete with root intrusion and offsets. Sometimes even, nobody thinks about this, but even with new sewer lines on new construction, guess what? It's always the if they don't dig that trench properly and they don't bed the soil right, the line's going to have problems. It's always the 18-year-old on the backhoe that fills in that trench too. And guess what? If he's too aggressive, now that line's also got an improper slope and it's trapping solids and water and it's not running properly. A lot of people don't think about this too. Most of the time they own that building sewer all the way to the point where it connects to the city tap under the street. Even if the city installed half of that line and up to the yard, maybe 50, 60 years ago, but you still own it all the way to the city tap. And if you ever talk to somebody who's had to have somebody come out and dig under concrete, you're talking $10,000, $15,000. So any opportunity at all that we can give our clients to offset that in advance is a huge value to them. Also, we don't talk about this much either, but think about this. When you hire us to do a home inspection, the standard of practice is to operate 2 fixtures simultaneously. That's it. Is it functionally drainage? Now, we already exceed the scope at Rock Solid. We're running all the plumbing at once for 90 minutes or 30 minutes to make sure there's no issues. And I'm going to pause for a second here. Even with us testing the plumbing that way, it's for a half an hour, it's still not the same as what happens when you move in with that family of 4 and you're placing a daily demand on the system and your teenagers are taking 40-minute showers. And you know what? I'm guilty myself of newly married years ago in our first place. We were renting it. My 4-year-old or 2-year-old son or whatever it was flushed one of his G.I. Joes down the toilet. I didn't know about it. We called the landlord, made a big stink. He had a plumber come out. Guess what he pulled out? Kids' toys. So there are all kinds of problems we encounter in the field. Right there, this is concrete, by the way. This is what a concrete pipe looks like. So even though it started with PVC, we immediately transitioned to a different material. And you can see roots growing in right there. This line's been cleaned. Somebody came in here recently and had cleaned this line. In another couple of months, those roots are going to be going up and down that line and completely trapping stuff. So we saved Mel, in this case, a big headache. And you know what? It wasn't that big of a deal to her. She knew that every couple of years she would clean it, no problem. This is an example of an offset. So you have a straight pipe, but at its connections, it no longer lines up properly. And that could be for a number of reasons. Something settled. It could be under a driveway even, and a heavy truck compacts the soil. Whatever it is, this line is offset, and because it's flowing downstream into the blockage, it's going to trap solids. This line is probably not going to have catastrophic failure, but there are going to be problems regularly without maintenance.
Vito,
Yes,
we
Dan.
have a question. Darlene says, thank you. She goes, I cannot seem to locate my clean out at my house. Is this something you can help me with?
That's a great question. Thank you, Darlene. So a lot of houses we do don't have clean outs, or they're buried in the yard. What you really want is to have a plumber come out with the locator equipment, and he can either find a buried one and put a riser on it so that it'll come up out of the ground and you have it, or he can install one if one's not there. But depending on the year the house was built, I know a lot of the older houses just don't have cleanouts, and that's just the way it is. Sometimes then you have to go in, you have to disconnect the toilet or go in through the roof or something like that. It can be managed, but cleanouts are preferred.
The home is 1958.
There's probably not a clean out. Either that or it's buried somewhere in the yard. But it's not a terribly difficult fix for someone who knows what they're doing and has the right equipment. But finding a clean out buried, is probably not something you want to ask your home inspector to do unless he gets lucky. And I've gotten lucky once or twice by guessing where I thought it might be, kind of digging around a little bit, and I saw one a couple inches below the soil, but I wouldn't recommend it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, she says she's not having issues, just always thinking ahead. It's always good to know where your clean out is if you have one. So that was a good question.
It was an excellent question. I agree. So that was Melanie Mel Mugford. We're going to jump over to a new one. And in this one, we had no clean out. I actually had to go in. Yeah, perfect segue. Had to go in this one from the kitchen sink, and we had a couple of minor issues, nothing huge. So let's see. Some of the newer ones I got a lot smarter on and started linking them directly to YouTube so we don't have to sign into the software to show the video. Hello, this is Vito with Rock Solid Home Inspections, and welcome to another exciting edition of Sewer Scope. That's right, in this episode we're at So they actually had a clean out right under the kitchen sink, and it was wide enough to get the camera in. It worked out perfectly. I don't like to do it because, you know, I'm bringing Sewer Scope equipment into the house, number one, and number two, sometimes based on the line construction, if there's a lot of twists and turns in that pipe, we simply can't push the camera through it, and we get stuck. So, you know, but we were okay here. Again,
So
this was.
Vito, what happens if the camera cannot enter the pipe?
Well, if it can't enter the pipe, then we can't do the Sewer Scope, and it means we're unable to do the service. However, but if there's no clean out and we can't get into the roof and there's no other access point, you know, we're not going to charge a customer for something we can't do. But most of the time there is somewhere to get into, whether it's a roof or, and again, you have to just kind of give your inspector the benefit of the doubt with that one, because there's clay roofs, there's steep roofs, there's a lot of equipment to drag up there. It's not always safe. But if there's no access point, there should be, and we'll let the client know that. But we're not going to charge them for a service that we can't do. More often than not, and I'm going to pause this video for a second because there are a couple of things I want to highlight. More often than not, we're going in through a rooftop and there's too many twists and turns to actually get all the way to the end of the city tap. In which case, we're still able to give them a good overview of what the line looks like, and we're left with a recommendation that, hey, you know what, there is no clean out or it's buried. And I really think you should have a plumber take a look at this line, put a clean out in, and then get that camera all the way to the end. It's not necessarily like end of the world type stuff unless we see something huge, but at least it can go onto their to-do list. It's definitely still a value add. But with this line, one of the things I noticed, even though the line seemed to be in decent shape, there was a lot of grease buildup in the line, and I did recommend cleaning.
Vito, quick question.
Sure.
When you're doing the snake, can you go into or not the snake, but the camera, can you go into the toilet?
No, that's a good question. But remember, it has that twist and turn underneath it that we can't get around. Also, remember, we're home inspectors, so we still have to try and stay away from doing any kind of destructive testing. So while a plumber might lift a toilet off the floor, to do that, we won't. It's just, it's a huge liability, and your home inspector just isn't qualified, nor does he have the tools or equipment for what essentially is the same as a toilet replacement.
Thank you, Vito.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was from Darlene as well.
Darlene, you're full of great questions. I want to do your next home inspection.
She says thank you.
Sure. So yeah, there's a lot of grease built up in this line, and it was holding water in some spots. I couldn't really see a cause because the camera was underwater, but you know what? It could be just as simple as a low spot or a belly. Another thing, how many times you go in these beautiful houses that have been flipped and they've fixed all the walls and they've painted and they've done all this stuff. Where do you think they cleaned all their tools and washed all their grout and debris down? You have no idea how much paint and plaster and rags and soda bottles, you name it, I find under the lines. And even though extra information, let's just call out the elephant in the room. It can be scary, right? Inspectors who kill deals have skinny kids. It's never going to change. But I know just because you're here, you're not afraid of detail. I know that because you're here, you know the kind of inspection we're going to do, and we're going to find all the information we can, and you're going to trust us to give a non-threatening walkthrough. You're going to trust us to arm the clients with as much detail as possible while putting it in perspective and not scaring people away. And this is no different. A lot of the things may look scary on camera, but you know what? A cleaning is an easy fix. Even some repairs are easy fixes for people who know what they're doing. And I just want to thank you guys for trusting us with your clients. So really, I think the issue with this line was just let's get it cleaned. Let's get it cleaned. Even with normal use, every decade or so, a line should be cleaned. And this one's no different. And I think we're going to do one more.
Hold on, we have a question. You mentioned cast iron and PVC. What are the different types of lines, and what are the risky ones? Morgan and Morgan.
So I'm going to, I think this is a good opportunity because I have screenshots. Let's talk about it. Cast iron. Let's go to cast iron. Cast iron's the big one. That's the one that has the most of the litigation on it. Here's an interior view of cast iron pipe. Now, the pipe itself will typically have an 80-year lifespan. It's metal. It's going to rust and scale and delaminate, and it's going to crack and get brittle over time. And you know what? The cast iron pipes. Now, the last home I lived in, and I sold it last year, had a cast iron pipe, and it was a 1954 build, if I remember right. I did a sewer scope, and I offered that as a pre-listing inspection. And the line itself was rusted, had some scale, but it was a straight shot. It was clean. There was no obstructions. There was nothing wrong with it. It had a clean out in the backyard, and I was able to show that. Unfortunately, that's not normal. What's normal is you have the rust and scale builds up, then it starts to delaminate, which means flaking off, and then it starts trapping solids. And as it flakes off, it doesn't just flake off the new buildup, it pulls part of the original pipe away with it. So what you end up is with this really thin, rusted out, brittle stuff. And once that line has a hole in it, every time it rains, a little bit more soil washes into the line, and you end up with these holes in your yard. And it's not, a sinkhole or a subsidence. It's just a washout. It's just sucking dirt right down into the sewer. Meeting's going to end in 10 minutes. Deanne, you told me that they eliminated that, right?
Well, when we were on the last one, it did. So I don't know. But we have a quick question if we only have 10 minutes left.
Sure.
So for new construction townhouse, would you do a sewer scope? This one is sandwiched in between others. I don't know if she's talking about the pipe or I think the pipes.
That's a great question. You know what? I would, with a caveat. So I actually did one very recently for new construction. It was a townhome, and it was for this lovely young couple. It was their first home. And a couple of things about that. Number one, I don't necessarily expect to find problems unless the construction crew was washing stuff down the drains, grout, paint, whatever, and they shouldn't have been. On the other hand, even if it's clean and it's a short run to the HOA tap or whatever it is, it proves that the condition was in good shape when they bought it. So that way, if there are any problems, guess what? Now our sewer guard warranty, which has been extended to 6 months because they had the sewer scope done, is going to cover it, because they can't say wasn't part of a home inspection, and they can't get around it. So it's a specific subset of people that might want that service in that instance, but it has some value, and that's how I would communicate it. That's a great question, Carla.
And someone would like for you to show the picture of the roots again, so when you get a chance.
I might have it here. I closed that thing too. Oh no, but that's all right. We're gonna use the power of Google for this one. There's a big one right there. Yeah. Yeah. That's an extreme case, by the way. Now, I personally have not seen anything quite this extensive, but I do see, I see stuff like this all the time. I see that all the time. Now, it's not quite so much when it's PVC, whether it's Schedule 40 or SDR 35, but I see it a lot in the clay pipes. I see it a lot in the cast iron pipes. I see it a lot in the concrete pipes. And do you know there's still Orangeburg and Bermeco pipes in areas in St. Pete and some of the older communities? They actually took cellulose, paper, and they made sewer lines out of it, and they ran it through old neighborhoods. Unbelievable. And you can tell right away because it's dark in color. It's got striations all the way down, and it's egg-shaped because it's paper and it gets wet and the soil just crushes it. And people are oh so surprised when they end up having to replace the entire line for like $15,000. It's crazy. And it gets to be more than that if it's under a driveway or a street or something. And while we're doing this, I have one more that I selected for us. This had multiple.
So Vito, while you're pulling that up, and I know that again we're not sure if we've got the 5 minutes or more, but I just wanted to. I know earlier I had mentioned our packages and the benefit that they bring, and both from a pricing standpoint as well as from a true ability to add value. With everything going on, Rock Solid has decided we typically run promotions throughout the year, mostly around our packages, but for our heroes, and I know I actually saw the shirt on Vito's, one of his videos, but we do offer a heroes discount of $50 to teachers, nurses, first responders, active and retired military. For the rest of the year, we are going to offer 20.20% off our packages to our heroes. So as a way to thank them for everything they are doing for our area right now with the coronavirus, we want to take an opportunity to do something for them as well. So again, typically, like I said, it's 10% off or 15% off depending on the package. But for the rest of the year, yes, and it would count for retired college instructors. I consider them teachers, and they did their work. And again, if you were on the beginning of the call, I'm trying to help my daughter with 8th grade science. Our teachers deserve as much as we can give them. So Anybody in that profession, yes, we will be happy to provide them 20.20% off for the rest of the year as a thank you. Our typical promotions don't run that high, so we will always take the highest of the two. And again, if they choose the basic inspection with a full home inspection, they still get the $50 off. But it's just another way for us to treat our clients like family. So, Vito, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure I mentioned that.
Okay, and we have another question. What kinds of symptoms would indicate the need for a sewer scope? Understanding that it's generally a good idea, but are there things that would tip off the need for one?
That's a great question. And ideally, yes. The problem is you're depending on disclosure for that, right? So how many sellers do you know recently had their sewer lines cleaned for routine maintenance, that wasn't a problem, or they decided to volunteer that information? A lot of times the disclosure means get your inspector and see what he can find out. This, I'm pretty sure, was an image of the brand new townhome that I did the line in. And that's like concrete right there. I know I found a rag in that line. So really, symptoms mean backups, gurgling, things like that, problems draining. And that's the problem. You're not going to know about it until water's backing up. Stephen, you had your hand up?
That was me taking a screenshot so I could post it on social media. Thanks, Vito, for pointing me out.
Sorry.
Vito, 2-minute warning.
Man, I just really want to say thank you, everybody, for coming. If you have any questions, now's the time. I hope it's been informative and useful, and I do work on requests too. So if any of you want to see your certified master inspector for what that's worth on site, just let us know, and I'm happy to come out and do the job myself anytime.
Hey, Vito, the Marion asked, she couldn't see the concrete in the pipe. Again, we're not sure if we're going to end it in 2 minutes, but I thought maybe you could go back.
It was just a little bit. It was just wet concrete that dried right here on the screen. I let the camera sit there for a while because I couldn't figure out what it was. But you can see, I mean, it isn't a whole lot, but yeah, that's dried concrete right at the bottom of the pipe. That's going to eventually trap solids.
So what is that brown bumpy stuff?
Concrete.
Okay. Someone had asked the brown, so I was just making sure.
Yeah. It was a great question. And, a lot of times, even for inspectors, it's hard to figure out what it is we're looking at. I had to go home and zoom in and okay. They're just washing stuff down the line when they were building the place. That's all. And it'll be there forever.
And Vito, recently we had a sewer scope where, and this process could probably take, I don't know, Vito, what's your typical time frame to do a sewer scope? How long does it take? 30 minutes or so?
Not even. Yeah, just most of it's setting up and breaking down the equipment, cleaning myself as I go and all of that. But
so after about 5 minutes, we couldn't go any further with the line, and the buyer had asked us about it, and we explained to them that you actually got your money's worth because the blockage was so much that we couldn't go any further. So really that was true value to the buyer, that at that point to call out the plumber and have them come take care of it.
Absolutely, because without the sewer scope video, regardless of how far it went, she would have moved in, and on day one of using that plumbing, that line would have backed up onto her floors, onto her carpets, whatever it was, and she's now paying for it instead of having an opportunity to get it remediated or at least make an informed